Hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday, October 22nd, 2014.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the Hockeybuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. It is also, for those keeping track at home, a Wednesday. So, but I usually say it's Wednesday, October 22nd. But it is a Wednesday as well. Before we get into the fun parts of the show, we got some unfun things that we have to get into here. There's a situation kind of developing in Ottawa as we speak. Mike, why don't you fill people in who maybe haven't been paying attention to the internet on this?
Well, it's still a fluid situation right now. All I know is that this morning around 10 to 10:30 there was a shooting of a Canadian soldier at the National War Memorial in Ottawa next to Parliament Hill. The soldier is alive. He's been taken to hospital. The gunman who shot him apparently proceeded across the lawn through the Peace Tower entrance to Parliament Hill, shot off anywhere between 30 to 50 rounds. That gunman was apparently killed by the Parliament Sergeant at Arms, but there are apparently a couple other gunmen. Another shooting took place in the Rideau Center Mall, which is very close to where Parliament Hill is. And the effect that it has on hockey, obviously, is the Maple Leafs are staying at a hotel that is part of the same complex as the Rideau Center Mall. They have been in lockdown since these events took place. There are still people on the loose. There's still a search going on. The game between the Senators and the Maple Leafs I think will be canceled. It would make sense that it's going to be canceled because the Leafs, there's normal preparations that have to be you go through on the day of a game, and that I'm sure right now the thought process of playing a hockey game is way down on the list of priorities right now with what's going on. But it's a very scary situation, and it's very similar to what happened when the Boston Marathon bombings happened, and I believe it was Ottawa who was in Boston at that point, and the game was canceled and moved to the end of the season. So I have a feeling within the next little while you'll hear a message from the National Hockey League postponing the game till a later date.
Yeah. I think that's coming. I mean, there's no reason that they would play this game at this point. I think we're already at 1 o'clock, and really they shouldn't be playing. Do you agree, Kev?
Couldn't agree more. I mean, the psychology of it, even the physical preparations are one thing, but are you in the frame of mind to play a game when, especially the Maple Leafs are in a lockdown situation with. So they sort of feel the impact of it all. So yeah, I'm guessing the only reason they haven't called it yet is the Maple Leafs probably are not in a position to discuss all the details of what it would mean when the game is being canceled. So I'm guessing they're just trying to get everybody together, and then they'll make an official announcement. But I just don't see how they can play the game.
Yeah, there's no way, and we'll let you know if anything develops during the show. Mike will be keeping an eye on it, but in all likelihood, this is the time when hockey should be put on the back burner, I do believe it will be. And really, our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody involved in this. This is just horrible, and just proof that it can happen anywhere at any time. You just have to be careful. So hug your loved ones and be thankful. So we're moving on to hockey. Trying to transition to hockey. I think nothing would be. I don't know. I'm trying to find something funny to try to transition to. But here we go. So I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go with Pacioretty's embellishment call last night, just for the heck of it, because we don't often embarrass players. But this is really good.
Yeah.
This is absolutely. Why we have embellishment, right? This is Kev, you were.
I was watching that game, and he is going to win the Greg Louganis Award this season for sure. That he stuck the landing on that one. It was a beauty. Like sometimes it's difficult to call that. Like it's easy to see in slow motion, but that one was so obvious. And by the way, I get the readers saying all the time that it should be either a diving call or a penalty. It shouldn't be both. But there is a logic to the reason it's both. That should have been a penalty. It would have been a penalty, but he gets the penalty because he basically as the penalty says, embellished. He tried to make it, more obvious than it even was, and for that reason, it's like showing up a referee. You pay the price. So even though a lot of my readers often say that it's illogical that both should get a penalty, it makes perfect sense to me.
I think so too, and I mean when you look carefully at this, it's about 30 feet between the blue line and the red line, I think, if I'm right. And he does a good 15-foot jump there. It's pretty good. It goes about halfway from the red line to the blue line. Pretty impressive. He actually took the red line as his jumping off point. So, Mike.
The Canadians are definitely in playoff mode when it comes to their diving. I think they've been working on the high platform wherever Team Canada works out for the next Olympics. I thought in the series against Boston last year they were just chronic divers. And, I understand the consequences. It's a playoff series, and one minor penalty and one power play goal can be the difference between winning and losing. But they've had that particular team in the last couple of years has had that reputation. Pacioretty is one of the guys who has been prominent in terms of being a diver, and it'll be interesting. Maybe this is their way of getting back at Michel Therrien. They're going to take $2,000 out of his pocket by diving incessantly.
Well, there are serial divers all over the NHL, and I think this is a good rule. I mean, I like the idea of making these guys public and embarrassing them. The fine won't matter, but the knowledge that the fine was laid out to identify people as divers. Although saying all that, Bill Barber is one of the great divers in NHL history, and yet I think he's almost become a player of endearment because of that. There are a lot of people who aren't Flyers fans who know Bill Barber because of that. So I don't know. Maybe this embarrassment won't actually work.
Well, the thing with Bill Barber at the time was really he played for a very dirty team. So it was very frustrating for people who played against him when they would, the Flyers would be like literally saw chopping guys across the backs of the heads and get a penalty, and then the makeup call would come, and Bill Barber basically invented the makeup call concept. Flyers were getting so many penalties against them that if Barber was pulled down, the referee had to give him something because it
wasn't really a makeup call. It was so one-sided. I agree. Yeah, but his were, really dramatic. He looked like he left the blocks, in the 100-meter race. He just would hurl himself. He'd go 30 feet. He would really toss himself, down the ice, and to be honest with you, it was kind of fun to watch that, back then. But now, the other thing is there weren't a lot of divers back then, so it was a novelty. It was almost like he created a new thing for us to watch, and now, there are enough of them that sometimes I wonder if I'm watching soccer.
Maybe we need to have a Billy Barber award at the end of the year for the greatest diver of the season.
Yeah, they could. Well, what's so amazing too is just the difference in sports. Soccer is a much bigger sport in the world than our little sport of hockey. Yeah. It's huge, and it's totally acceptable.
I know.
And players are exalted for their ability to get calls just by the way they go down. And some of those guys in soccer go down like they've been shot by a .22 caliber bullet.
I know.
They just flop around, and when you see a guy, this is a true story. I covered the World Cup in, I think it was '96, and in the U.S. and I'm covering soccer, and I had covered enough hockey, and I'm sure you're like this too. I can tell the way whether a guy goes down, how serious his injury are. If a guy goes down in such a way, you're thinking, oh man, he blew out his knee, and generally you're right because you've seen enough of them.
Right.
You can never tell with soccer players.
Oh, I know. No, it looks like the world has ended.
It is. I saw a guy go down, and I thought, my God, that's an ACL. He's gone 4 to 6 months, and they carted him off on off the field on a stretcher. They sprinkled a little that holy water on him or whatever it is they throw on him, and then he got up, shook his knee off, and was back in. 5 minutes later, and I would have sworn that it was ACL. So go ahead.
See, the embellishment I have the most problem with. There is a bit of artistry to what Pacioretty did and other players have done. The one I have a problem with is along the boards. I remember a game that I attended a few years ago where Dustin Byfuglien got a 5-minute major in a game misconduct for hitting Zach Cassian, who was with Buffalo at the time, behind the net. And the replay, and they had already called the 5 in a game, he was gone. The replay basically showed Zach Cassian projectiling himself into the boards. And with with the concerns over concussions, with the concerns over neck injuries, things against the boards, you have players either putting themselves in a vulnerable position, waiting for the player to throttle them and to hurtle themselves into the boards as a tactic to get a power play. I think that's the ultimate in stupidity, but I also think they're accentuating their vulnerability to draw that player in. So I can't stand that. I really can't. I think it's an embarrassment to the game, and one of the things that embarrasses me, and I'm a soccer fan, is the diving and the overacting. It's like, give them an Oscar. Don't give them the World Cup. Give them an Oscar for Best Actor.
Yeah, the one I hate too is when they jerk their head back to get a call as if they've been high-sticked. I'm really bothered by that. To me, that's insulting the game.
It really is, and it's as if we're not going to see this. It's as if there's not 45 high-definition cameras facing them at all times. It's not like the good old days where if no one was looking, no one saw it. I mean, this is going to get seen. This is a good thing to see, actually. Moving on a little bit, if you want. I think we can move on from this topic. Sorry, Terry Wingles last night. Now, talk about a kid who's a little bit tougher than we might have thought. Did you see this? He Forsberg's Chara here, literally. You don't see this happen very often, where Chara ends up on his butt in the corner. This was he just Chara goes in to hit him, and he does the old Forsberg brace and you fall play. Which, although the other funny thing about this clip to me is that Chara literally doesn't miss a beat on this. He so I'm down. He's on his knees. He's still 4 feet tall on his knees. He comes around and picks up the puck and just continues on. But it was something to see him get knocked off his feet. I don't think that I've seen that very often, and I didn't know Wingles was that strong on his skates, honestly.
That is a great execution of the Forsberg.
Yes.
Lunge.
That Peter made so famous. I mean, that was one of my favorite things about watching him play was this. He would always, a player would go after him, and the other player would end up on the ice, and I had to love that.
Yeah, he was a block of granite. Datsuk does that as well.
Yeah, and it takes such strength and such balance to be able to do that. When you think about what you're doing on ice skates, Tommy Wingle, sorry, I called him Terry. Think what you're doing on ice skates. You're actually somehow bracing yourself against a 250-pound player coming at you, and you're on ice skates, and you're not going to give on an icy surface. That's pretty impressive in general. So yeah, that was something to watch. And one other little highlight we have today before we get into the meat of the show, I'd like this too. This is a good one. This is why Dustin Byfuglien has people so confused, because this is a hell of a play by Dustin Byfuglien here. I don't know if you guys saw this last night or not. This Byfuglien takes the puck away, literally, and just goes on. This is a defenseman, right? So he could absolutely be one of the, I think if he just found the right team in the right situation, he could be one of the top 10 defensemen in the league. That's my belief.
Well, I tend to agree with you on that, and what's interesting about him is we all know that he has battled weight problems. But even when he has tipped the scales at more than 280, because I've been told by teammates that he's still among the top skaters on the team. He always tests amazingly well when he skates. And here's the other thing that a lot of people don't realize, and I learned this when I was embedded with the U.S. Olympic hockey selection committee. He's very popular with his teammates. Guys like to play with Byfuglien. In the room, he's a guy that everybody sort of gravitates around there. He's a little rough around the edges with the media, but players like him in general. He's considered a very good team guy. But saying all that, I still think the Winnipeg Jets would be better off trading him, because I think the debate on whether he should be a defenseman or a forward is just disruptive to a team. To me, you put them one or the other. You make your decision, but to go back and forth, I think guys like steady. They like the consistency in terms of the way they're going to play each day. And if Byfuglien is up front or if he's in defense, you play differently. But he prefers defense for sure, and we can see the impact of when he charges up the ice. And he's got the speed to carry the puck in, and he looks like he's in pretty good shape right now.
Yeah. I mean, he looks in great shape, and I think if a guy, when I kind of go back to youth sports for a second in a crazy way, like you have a new player on your team or in youth, and you tend to see some players that just when you're scrimmaging end up playing defense, or some players that just when you're scrimmaging end up being the scorers. You're just throwing players out there and seeing where they tend towards. Byfuglien knows that he tends towards that's what he wants to do. That's his instincts. And but because he's so big, because he's such a presence, because he can score, and because of what he did in Chicago as a forward in the playoffs, I think there's so much confusion, about this. But at the end of the day, it kind of reminds you a little bit of Brent Burns, which we'll talk about in a second too, which is the same kind of okay. What are you really? What is this player?
Well, there's one other element to that too, and that he plays poor defensively, which you have to factor in. He's not. He's not a good defensive player. I mean, we've all watched him. And Paul Maurice, I mean, I get it. Paul Maurice is a very sharp coach. Very modern, cerebral coach, and I'm sure he's analyzed it. And if he, last season he started using him a lot at forward, well, I'm sure he believes that there's more benefit to that. But I don't know. I would have him as a defenseman, and more importantly, I think you could get a lot for him. I think the romance with Byfuglien around the NHL is deep. I think people are in love with him. His potential and everything else, and I think they see him as a difference maker. And that shot, everybody wants to see that shot. Like, that is a laser. That's a laser that he has from the point.
The problem is he's a double-edged sword. I mean, his offensive abilities, especially playing defense, are unquestioned. But I've seen him play games, especially against Toronto, where he played 28, 29 minutes. But being on defense and being I say below average defensive defenseman, he just increases the giveaways and the problems. I mean, I think what Paul Maurice is doing is limiting his defensive liabilities by putting him on the wing.
Yeah, but that's limiting his game. That's limiting him. That to me that is exactly what he's doing. But I think this is like a philosophical question at this point. I mean, I'm not anywhere near an NHL coach like Paul Maurice is. But I'm just giving my opinion on this. I just feel that history will show you that when you have a player that has certain spectacular abilities like Byfuglien has, you don't limit those. You find a way to work around that. You put your team around that, and you make that work. Like, you put him on defense, and you have somebody on defense who can play with him, who knows what he's dealing with, and is going to play a specific kind of defense because he's playing with Dustin Byfuglien.
Well, it's the old Mike Green argument, and they're two completely different defensemen. But Mike Green is at his best was a premier offensive defenseman, but he hung his team out to dry multiple times. Yeah. And the thing is, you have to weigh the cost benefit there. Is he going to create more goals by his genius on offense, or is he going to create more opportunities for the other team going the other way? I mean, he's a risk, and I think that, like I said, what I think Maurice is doing is limiting the risk, trying to get the offense out of Byfuglien without the defensive giveaways.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex permutation. Like, when you put it the way you did, it sounds like, well, when you put him up front, you lose his offensive might. Well, you don't. You limit he's not on the ice as much, but he's still got that big shot. You still can utilize them on the point on the power play.
Right.
So there, you can still take advantage of it. I mean, the only difference is, and this was the Paul Coffey argument. When a defenseman is coming up the ice, there's no one really assigned to check him. You're coming late to the party and you're usually all alone, and then you can take advantage of the open ice. That's the the major difference. But if I agree completely with Mike. If he's hurting you so severely defensively, and it's not as easy. I mean, it's nice to say, well, put him with a defensive defenseman, but the teams in this league can exploit defensive pairings who have one weak partner. I mean, they all know how to do that. So it's complex. I think but my point would be there are teams who would put him on defense and have defensive players to put with him that would make it easier to hide his defensive deficiencies. But they probably would still have to get him to adjust his game a little bit.
Yeah, Scotty Bowman moved Phil Housley from defense to center for about 40 games in the mid 80s because he was so terrible defensively, and it didn't work, and he had to move him back. So
and Bowman moved Fedorov back to defense just because he thought he would be a great defenseman. So
I think the big thing on this is the way you see the game, the way you look at the game, because a defenseman coming up the ice sees the game way differently, and I think that's why Byfuglien is more comfortable at defense. I think because you see the game better from defense than you do from wing. You just see how the whole thing's developing in front of you, and I think that's why Byfuglien wants to be on defense. And that's why he does. And you're right. I mean, he's got to adjust his game. I don't think he's ever going to make that kind of adjustment in Winnipeg. And to me, that's the issue that you're saying, Kevin. And I agree with that completely. If you put him in the right, that's why you say the right team with the right coach, with players around that can convince him that that he should make these little adjustments, he could be that good.
Yeah, I mean, and little adjustments is the right word. I mean, it's very similar to what we're seeing in Washington with Ovechkin. You don't go in and turn Ovechkin into a Selke Trophy candidate.
Right.
You go in and say, I still need you to do what you do, but as Barry Trotz said, but I'm going to teach you ways to get the puck back when you don't have it. That's the way you sell that. So it's just a minor adjustment, and I think, and I agree with you completely on why, Byfuglien likes it. But the bottom line of why Byfuglien loves it, he loves the open ice.
Guys, just came through. Leafs Senators game has been canceled by the NHL.
Okay. All right, so there's the official word. It's a smart thing to do. I hate when terrorists affect things at all. I just want them to, but that's the one thing. But it's obviously the smart thing to do, and it's the only thing you can do.
Yeah, and unlike and not that this was a factor, but unlike the Boston-Ottawa situation, which happened, I think, in late March, and there were very few open days that the Bruins and the Senators could play, and I think they ended up playing on the last day or the following the last day to get the game in. We're in the middle of October. We have an entire 70 some odd games left in the regular season. There's going to be numerous open days here, so better to move the game to December or January and make sure safety is taken care of.
Plus, it's a divisional game. It's Toronto and Ottawa. I mean, these teams aren't that. It's not like you're talking about LA and New York. You're talking about teams that are a couple hundred miles apart from each other, or I should say, a couple thousand kilometers apart from each other, or however that works. Up in Canada. A little quick breaking news here also. This is from Ken Campbell, the Hockey News, that Slava Voynov's lawyer is now saying there was no crime here. And this will read a little bit of this article. It's on the hockeynews.com. And this is Ken Campbell again, saying the lawyer for Los Angeles Kings defenseman Slava Voynov said he interviewed the victim of Voynov's alleged domestic abuse incident for more than an hour Tuesday, and it's clear to me there was no crime here, and doubts his client will even be charged with an offense. Craig Winitsky is a criminal lawyer who's representing Voynov in the matter, said the language barrier both on the part of Voynov and the alleged victim has created a misunderstanding, and that the victim's injuries that caused her to be hospitalized were the result of an accident. Voynov was arrested early Monday morning in Los Angeles. Of course, we know this. Yet to be charged with anything, pending a police investigation. Hopefully, the police will understand this, Winitsky says, and we're hoping the NHL looks at new evidence and will lift the suspension. What the police will find out is when they talk to her is the action was not related to Mr. Voynov. I can't go into complete details, but Mr. Voynov never hit the woman. This is really just a pure accident, and we're going to provide them with some additional evidence. We hope they'll present to the district attorney's office, and if they do, based on my evidence, they don't have a case. So this is what the lawyer from Voynov is saying. So that hopefully this is all true. And,
well, I mean, yeah, it'll go through the process, the investigative process. But there was an interesting look on this whole situation from Chris Johnston of Sportsnet. He wrote a column yesterday that the NHL may have opened up a little bit of a can of worms with this, because based on how long this process takes. I mean, if he is charged, how long it takes to get to trial. I mean, right now, his money is on and this is strictly the machinations of the NHL and the Kings itself. Voynov, his contract, his money is on the cap.
Right.
And now, at what point, if he does go to trial, I mean, how long does it stay on the cap? I mean, you have situations in the NFL where I think Ray Rice and Adrian Peterson's money is not on the cap. They've been, they're still being paid, but there is a factor here for the Kings. You have one of their better defensemen who is, in out of action. He's not placed on long-term injury or anything where they would be able to use the cap money. So it penalizes not only it doesn't penalize Voynov because he's still getting paid, but it penalizes the Kings because they have a player who supposedly did this. So it's a very, very confusing situation, and you don't know what the league is going to do down the line.
Yeah, Kevin.
Well, I think it won't be confusing very long. I mean, it's not like they're going to just let this hang out there forever and a day. They're going to do their investigation, and then, there'll be some kind of suspension handed or not. And if he's suspended, then he'll be without pay. So, I mean, I get the point that it's going to be complicated because they have to sort that out. But I think logic will prevail here at some point. And if he's suspended for a lengthy period of time and he's not paid, I think that's a different story.
Yeah, I agree. One more thing. Sorry, I just keep saying one more thing, but then we have something else to go. I don't know if you saw this, but Don Cherry had some comments about the Oilers and saying that the Oilers should trade Eberle. Okay, and here's the comments that he said. He said you can't trade Yakupov because nobody's going to take him, said Cherry per Sportsnet.ca. Eberle, or one of those guys, have got to go. It's a tough deal giving one of the young players away, but something's got to go. And basically going on to say that there's depth in the Oilers, the depth the Oilers have at wing. Eberle is the candidate to go. And then this put on a flurry of things. I think Daniel Friedman, who came on and said, he thinks that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins should go over Eberle because of RNH's health. Some people say David Perrin should go. Draisaitl should probably go back to juniors before he's completely destroyed forever. Everything. But the question is, the thing that really struck me. This is the second time. Last year, Darren Dreger came out and said that no one will take Yakupov. And saying that Toronto would not touch him with a 10-foot pole, and no one else would either. Remember? So now again, and I just don't agree with this. I think that Yakupov has value. I think that people are crazy if they think no one's going to take Yakupov. Kevin?
I completely agree. Everybody. The potential there. He's the #1 pick. I think they'd get some value. I mean, if the point is they'd get more for those other players, yes. But I think you could get a nice return for Yakupov. I mean, why wouldn't Florida take a chance on him? A team like the Red Wings would take a chance on him. They know Igor Larionov, really well. There are a lot of teams I think that would.
The Devils are one. The Devils are another team I've heard would take a chance.
Why wouldn't Arizona?
Right.
About this the other day with, So I think they could get a lot for him, but I wouldn't trade Eberle because it's sooner or later you're going to turn the corner. We've been waiting for a long time, but sooner or later they will turn the corner, and then guys like Hall and Eberle and Nugent-Hopkins are basically going to be the foundation blocks of your team. I mean, to me, those three players, plus Draisaitl and Schultz are your foundation blocks. So you trade one of them, you're disrupting the foundation.
I think the problem here is that whether Edmonton can get what they perceive as equal value for Yakupov as opposed to what other teams are offering. I mean, other teams right now are going into this saying, okay, he's in the third year of his NHL career. He had an okay rookie year. He had a subpar sophomore year. The organization's under a lot of heat. We're going to lowball them. We're going to try to get him for what we perceive as underneath his actual value. And in that case, Edmonton, can't really trade him. They have to get equal value for him.
But at what point do you keep the leather sofa in the guest room? Like there's something. It's like this to me is like you don't need the leather sofa in the guest room. Like this is not doing anyone any good, Yakupov right now. It's not. What they need is they need a shakeup, and whether that's going to be their coach is gone or whether that means they move their team to Quebec, or I don't know. I'm just saying this all has to change. Something has to change here. That's my thought, Mike. Go. I'm sorry.
I mean, their coaching staff has been a turnstile the last 4 years. You can't really just
I know that's the point, right? So that's exactly it. And I agree. Another coaching change just makes you really look foolish. Yeah.
And I don't think trading a David Perron or a Matt Hendricks or somebody of that nature is really going to affect anything. It has to be a core player, and they have to get the equivalent core talent back. I don't think Florida is going to trade Jonathan Huberdeau for Nail Yakupov. No team is going to do that. The deal that that was hinted at one of your blogs last week, where it's a defenseman and a prospect from Arizona. I mean, that might make sense if the defenseman is a Keith Yandel, who could be one of their top two defensemen. If it's a Zbynek Michalek, who's a 5 or a 4 or a 5, that doesn't really help them. They need impact players in the right places for them to improve.
Yeah.
If they really want to get a really nice return and really change the look of this team, the one asset they could trade is the first pick in their top pick in this year's draft.
Yeah, isn't that something? That would take balls, and I like that move. That would really be something that I would admire. That would be very Brian Burke of them. But yeah, I think that would be, we are not going to tank this year, guys. We cannot finish in that spot. We can't, right? I mean, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, if they did that, I mean, you could really get a lot for that. What would Buffalo give up for that pick?
Right.
Buffalo has some players who could certainly help.
What about Tyler Myers? I mean, they would be a great fit there, I think. And now I think Yandel's a bad fit for them, but that's just my personal opinion there. I like Yandel, but I think he's more of the same kind of defenseman that they have.
Well, he's Schultz. He's just another,
right.
Like, but he's very gifted, obviously.
Yeah.
He could run the power play. Their power play in Edmonton should be so much better than it is with the skill that they have. They should be around 25%, in my opinion.
So Jim Thorburn in our chat room, and I'm going to take more questions from the chat room, guys. I apologize for not doing so. Someone pointed this out yesterday. I'm like, you know what? You're right. I haven't gone to you guys enough. Has a question for us involving this. He wants to know the panel's opinion on Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Just in general. I mean, he is a guy who has been hurt a lot. He has shown potential at times. He is, up and down, and we've seen him now for quite a while. He's, some people think he's undersized. Is he a franchise centerman? Mike, why don't you start with RNH? What are your thoughts?
He's got all the talent in the world. He's got speed. He's got good vision on the ice. I think he has scoring ability. His question has been durability. He started the year on the IR, or he was out for the first few games. I think that's always going to be his question, and you can always make the argument that a number one center is not only a talented center, he's also a durable center, and maybe even a big center. And Nugent Hopkins is I don't think he's ever going to be a true prototypical number one NHL center because he just doesn't have the size and the durability. But I think he's a quality player, and I don't think it was a mistake to take him with the first pick in that draft. I just don't know whether he's ever going to fulfill the the hopes of Edmonton fans that he's going to be a franchise level center.
Yeah, I mean the real issue with evaluating Edmonton Oilers players is the environment in which they're playing. Yeah. It's really hard to get a handle on how good these players can be. I mean, Everly's been there long enough that I think we have a good sense of what he's about, in Taylor Hall as well. But even Nugent Hopkins, just he hasn't been surrounded by the right people. I think he's a highly skilled player, and I think if he were on a different team, he would be a fan favorite. But I do agree that durability is a key for people who play in the top six, and he's got to stay healthy. It seems like little things, little nagging things, and that's always a worry. When you get a broken bone or something like that, and that's just bad luck sometimes. But if it's all the time where you've got this and that, and that's when it becomes a real issue.
Some are saying, in the chat room, that if he wasn't a center, he would be the one on the way out. That the biggest asset he has is the fact he's a center.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, centers are just so hard to come by. That's why I think you have to be a little bit patient and see what he's like once the team gets competitive. I mean, this team hasn't been competitive for a long time. Imagine the frustration of coming to work every day in that environment. So.
Yeah, and they really have no second option at center right now. I mean, Draisaitl eventually will be their number 2, maybe even their number 1 center because he's a bigger guy. But right now their number 2 center is Mark Arcabello, and when you have and Boyd Gordon is their number 3 center. So they really don't have depth up the middle. So they really can't trade from a point of weakness. Trade Nugent Hopkins away. Otherwise, their center situation will just be a cavern.
It's really interesting they've gotten all these top picks and they've been wings. It's such a strange thing that you would think about. Really, it seems like the top player, the best player usually, in my mind, at least I always think of, is a center, right? Like that, that's who you're going to, it's just rare that they get all these wings, that they've gotten. And I love some of their players, and, we'll see. And so before we move to our thing, Mike, I just wanted to congratulate you on Brad Richards picking up his first point last night.
Here we go.
Yep. That meaningless assist on the goal to make it a 4-0 game. Definitely something worth talking about. He's got 1 point now in 5 games, which, if calculated out, works out to about 20 points in the season. So
77 games to go, 49 points to go. I still have.
I'm looking. I don't know. And the funny thing is this is not a knock on Brad Richards. I just don't. Some people are like, "Oh, stop the Brad Richards hate." It's not hating Brad Richards. I like Brad Richards a lot. I just don't think he's a 50-point scorer right now on any team in any situation. So that's just
that's a little harsh. I actually agree with Mike on this, as you recall. But he hasn't been obviously on the second line. The stories coming out of there is they want to give him time to adjust. But I really thought that he would hit the ground flying, just because this is such a great situation for him. But he has not been given the opportunity. His minutes reflect, third line play, not second line play.
Which his salary reflects. It's not. There's nothing wrong with him being a third line player. I mean, he's not. They're not paying him a boatload here.
But you don't bring in Richards to be a third liner. You bring him in to be a playmaker on the second line. I mean, look, I'm not going to doubt that Joel Quenneville's doing the right thing, because I think he has shown that he knows what he's doing there. So if that's what he thinks, that's what he thinks. But I think given the opportunity, he'd be a 60-point guy.
But what? Go ahead, Mike.
And to follow up on my rant from yesterday in the Islanders-Leafs game, John Tavares scored a goal. He was -2 on the night, but he scored a goal, a nice power play goal. Nazem Kadri, no points in 13 minutes. He was a
Tavares. Yeah, no, that would have to.
Ghost. So he remains a pimple on the fanny of John Tavares.
No, he said he wasn't a pimple on the fanny.
Well.
To be clear here.
You get my drift.
I was going to tell this story yesterday, but the last time I heard the pimple on the rump reference was I was actually shooting pool. So it was a little bit hairy. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh Lord! Oh my God!
Shooting pool, and I was shooting pool for money, and speeches were given, and that reference was used. So.
This is that's a great story. That sounds, it's like, that's like the rock band saying, last time I heard this, Portland, Oregon, 1974. Yeah, there you go. That to me that's awesome. But yeah, no, I still think it was a good signing. I actually think that he does bring some leadership, and which is good. And and I know you don't need a player who's won a Stanley Cup on that team. So, but at the bottom line is what I keep getting people emailing me about is, would you trade Brad Richards for Nick Leddy? Because that essentially is what happened, and that's where some of the Blackhawks fans are having problems with this whole thing, because they're looking at, okay, we had to give up Nick Leddy because we had to sign Brad Richards.
Well, that's a fair debate. Because obviously he's younger and still has potential, but he was scrapping for playing time. And, in the playoffs when the games really mattered, we didn't see him. Leddy was not the guy they were putting on the ice. So I get the move. I thought it was a great move when they made it, and I still believe it could work.
Yeah, Nick Leddy's a third pairing defenseman who was averaging in the playoffs around 8 or 9 minutes. I mean,
got 3 goals. Nick Leddy does.
Yeah, he had a goal last night.
Opportunity, yeah. And if Richards had the opportunity, if he was really playing with, Patrick Kane, his points would be up.
Yeah, he's going to play 20 minutes with the Islanders, Zach. I mean, him and Boychuk are going to, they're going to be on their top 2 pairings. They're getting Wisnowski back. I mean, the Islanders significantly upgraded their defense with the additions that they made. I'm just saying that from the Chicago point of view, he was an 8-minute defenseman. They have guys like Trevor Van Riemsdyk, who they're giving a look to. They have David Rundblad, who they've had for a couple years, who they probably want to give a look to, and they probably think they can replace his minutes without really significantly hurting their team. So I think that's what their thought process was.
No, agreed. Okay, so what we're going to do in the end here, and I'm going to do it with the chat room as well, guys, we're going to try something called buying or selling. We're going to throw out quick hot topics, and I'm going to throw out some topics, and Kevin and Mike are going to either buy or sell on these topics, meaning that if they're buying it, they agree. If they're selling, they disagree. Then they'll have a few minutes to make their point, and then I will prove who eventually is right, as the great orator that I am. So we'll start there, and you feel free to play along in the chat room because I like your opinions as well. And so the first topic, let's go with this one. Should Mike Babcock, and will Mike Babcock, be Team Canada's Olympic coach in 2018? Mike?
I'm buying that because he's considered one of the top coaches in the game. He's won 2 Olympic gold medals already. I think he relishes the opportunity. I think he likes the spotlight. And if you bring in a new coach, he could be intimidated by that the focus of that Olympic pressure. So I don't know if Team Canada is going to the Olympics, but or if the NHL is going to the Olympics. But if they do, Babcock will be the coach of Team Canada.
Kevin.
Totally buying it. The worry you have in picking Olympic coach is, will he be employed by the NHL at that time? We have no such worry with Mike Babcock.
Right.
Who has proven, and he's been offered a reasonable contract in Detroit. And if he doesn't take that, he'll get it even longer one elsewhere. So, and the other thing about him too is he has a tremendous short tournament coach, because he can see and develop a big picture in a very short period of time. Ken Hitchcock made that point to me before, that he can look at players and come up with several different line combinations. So his game is actually suited for a short tournament.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, he's won 2 in a row, right? So I mean, when you look at that, that's the other thing too. He's got, they've won 2 in a row, and I do think, just as an aside, I do think we're going to the Olympics one more time, in my opinion. But we'll see. I mean, that's still to be determined for sure. All right, here's a good one. The Montreal Canadiens, who I will admit are showing unbelievable savvy and heart early in the season. They've really been a team that finds ways to win. This is what was good about them last year, and they've continued it on. That they are, even though they're outmatched and sometimes look terrible throughout large portions of the game, they again found a way to win last night. They're a very dramatic team. Very dramatic, as dramatic as their opening ceremonies, I would say, Mike. So are they the team to beat in the East, Mike?
Sell. No. I predicted them to be a wild card team.
Dude, I lost money on this one. I bet $100 that you would buy this one. Sorry, I gotta.
No. They're getting, they've allowed 21 goals so far. I believe they're 6-1, but their goals for and their goals against are, I think, 22 goals for, 21 goals against. Eventually that's going to catch up to them. I think Carey Price is not playing as well as he normally would, which, I mean, maybe would be an indication that they'll be better once he does start playing well. But I still think that the loss of veteran players that through over the offseason in the end is going to have a detrimental effect on them. I think they're a playoff team, but I don't think they're the team to beat in the East. No way.
Totally selling. The East is wide open, in my opinion. I've been impressed with the survival skills that the Canadians have shown. I watched that game last night, and they were outplayed until the third period, and then they just took over. It's almost like they said, we're on a roll here. We can't let this stop. So
exactly what they did in Philly.
Pardon me? Yeah. I mean, they've got good survival skills. They've been very impressive, but they're not. They play. Their defense is not airtight, and there are some good teams in the East who will challenge them.
Yeah, to me that's the thing with them. They are they're a very good team at holding momentum. When they get momentum, they are crazy. Like once they get the momentum back, it's gonna be insane. They started last night was a carbon copy of the Philly game. Flyers were up 3-0 in that game, and then Montreal they scored one goal, and suddenly they could have scored 12 goals. And they did it against Toronto too in the opening game of the season, where the Toronto scored, and then the Canadians got the momentum back, and suddenly could have scored 3 or 4 more goals in a couple minutes. They are really they roll on momentum.
The Leafs tied the game with around 3 minutes left to go, and the Canadians won with less than a minute. And last night it looked like they flicked a switch. I mean, Galchenyuk scored, I think, with 3 minutes left to go in regulation, and then they got the winning goal very early in overtime. So
they're a very confident group. They're a very confident group of hockey players right now. That's for sure. Here's a good one. The Sharks will eventually move Burns back to forward. Kevin, what are your thoughts on this one?
Oh, I'm selling on this for sure. They moved him back there for a reason. That that's where he started. He's got the big shot. They gave up Boyle. He's playing the most minutes on their team where he was going into the last game. He's got a lot of shots from the point. They haven't lost anything on the offense. He's a big body. And they have, even though they've had some rough patches defensively, and I'm concerned about the number of shots they're giving up, they've actually been okay defensively with him back there.
Yeah, Mike?
I'm a marginal sell here. I mean, if they go out and are able to make a trade for a defenseman, which we've heard that mentioned over the first couple of weeks, then it's conceivable. I don't know how much Brent Burns is going to like being yo-yoed back and forth between forward and defense all the time. I mean, now he's back there at the position that he played when he was first in San Jose and back with Minnesota. I don't think he really wants to go back to forward after being moved back there again. So a marginal sell.
I'm going the opposite. I'm going to buy here. I think they only did this because, they did this as some great statement when they came out and said it, but they only did this, in my opinion, because they lost Boyle. I mean, they lost their defense. They lost Boyle. Had they not lost Boyle, he'd still be a forward. So I'm with you, Mike. I think that they are looking to get that defenseman, and I think that once they get that defenseman, he's going. I actually think he's a better forward. Where I was saying the opposite, with I do think he's more of a forward than Buff. Where I think Byfuglien should be on defense. All right, here we go. Tanner Pearson is leading Canada right now for Rookie of the Year, right? A lot of people will tell you this. It's debatable, but he's having a hell of a season. That's my statement. Are you buying or selling it, Kev?
Oh, I'm buying. He's right on the border. 25 games played. He's won a cup. He's actually played a full season, really.
Yeah.
He's played like 50 games, and I think 20 some of them. We're in the playoffs, which is heavy-duty hockey. He's playing on the hottest line in hockey, that 70s group with, Carter and Toffoli. I mean, he's got so much going for him. He's just a more advanced rookie. And Druin, who I think is very dynamic, got the late start, so, that's going to hurt him. I mean, Gaudreau is certainly, I think, going to get some points as the season wore on. But I think Tanner's really emerged strong out of the gate, and there's really no indication that he is going to have any problems.
Mike?
I buy it right now, but we are 6 games into the season, 7 games into the season. I think he has 5 goals. He's played great so far, but it's an 82-game season, so I don't think he's going to keep up this pace. But as Kevin said, he has won a Stanley Cup. He does have experience. He played well in the American Hockey League and in the NHL last year, so I think he'll be a contender. But I don't think he's going to keep up the pace that he's at right now.
I'm going to throw this out there. I want to know that. I have a question for you, Kevin. Do you think that this will affect the fact that he's played so many games affects him at all when people voting for him?
No, I don't. I think the only thing that's ever got into the psyche of writers was the age difference. We've had cases, and I'm trying to think there's one recent, where the one player was older and the other player was 18, and I think some writers felt that Ty went to the younger player. I don't feel, in my opinion, that you shouldn't take age into consideration. I mean, that's not what the rules say. The rules don't say, if it's a close call, that it should go to the younger player. If you're eligible, you're eligible. So it shouldn't play a role, and I don't think it will in this case because, he was right on the border of 25 in terms of the number of games he played, and also it's not like he's a 25-year-old guy.
Yeah, I mean, weren't players like Sergei Makarov and Peter Stastny considered for Rookie of the Year, even though they were older? I mean,
that's why they changed the rule. Yeah, they changed the rule to age 25. But Pearson's not anywhere near there. So
right. It is. I just wonder in his specific instance, because so many writers have covered him in such a great detail, having covered the Stanley Cup runs. Like when I think of him, if I was going to vote for him or somebody else, I think I would maybe subconsciously just lean, I might not admit it, but I might be like, I think Drouin's the better rookie or what have you, just because I've covered Pearson so much, I have a tough time imagining. I mean, I've already interviewed him like 3 or 4 times myself, so I just think that to me is something that, you have to, I don't know, we'll see. Finally, the Ducks are the most impressive team in hockey is my statement right now, so far. Let's, Mike, buying, selling.
A marginal sell again. I mean, I've been impressed by Tampa Bay so far. I'm more impressed by Tampa Bay and to a lesser extent by Montreal, even though I don't think it's going to be its reality. And the Ducks, I mean, they did add Kessler. They're getting great goaltending out of Frederik Andersen. I think they're going to be one of the best teams in the West, but I think that's not a great shock. I mean, I think everybody thought it was going to be them or LA in the Pacific Division for first place, and I think they're living up to their expectations, but I don't consider them a great surprise.
Yes.
Now I'm confused. Was the question about surprise, or was it?
Are the Ducks the most impressive team?
Yeah. I'm definitely selling. To me, the team that I've been most impressed with in the West, in particular, has been the Chicago Blackhawks. They're out of the gate strong. You look at the number of shots they're putting on net, and they're not giving up all that many shots either. They're scoring more than 3 goals a game. Crawford goes down, Ranta comes in, posts a really big shutout. They've been very impressive to me. I think they're ready. I think we're going to be right back where we were last season, where they're going to be in the conference final, pushing it. They could have easily won the Cup last season, and as we all know, and I think they're going to be in contention right at the end to win it again. But I think they've been very impressive coming out of the gate.
I am selling, and I am going with a team that neither of you guys have mentioned, which is the Nashville Predators. To me, they are the most impressive team so far in the NHL. They are 4-0-2, right? They have, but they have the 2 overtime losses, but they have not lost in regulation. And this is from a team that most would not. They are leading the Central Division, which is, I know it's very early, but still, this is the Central Division that everybody, talks about as being a crazy, as being the best division in all of sports. And not a lot of people pick the Predators to make the playoffs. So to me, that's why I put them as the most impressive so far. And let's do the least impressive real quick. I'm going to throw this out there. The Oilers are the least impressive team so far. Mike, buying, selling?
Selling. It's a tie between the Carolina Hurricanes, but obviously because of the injuries, and the Buffalo Sabres. They other than one victory in Carolina, they have been brutal with the capital B. But I think that was the design, and I think they're going to continue that. And they're on a West Coast road swing now, which will probably end up in 3 or 4 losses.
I'm buying for sure. I think we all expected this out of Buffalo and Carolina, and with Carolina having the injuries they've had, we expected Edmonton to be a little better. I mean, it was time. It was time, and they have not been better. Although they played really well in their last game, so let's see what they do moving forward. But I think they've been the least impressive team because I mean we've talked about them so much because they've been a mess. I mean they've been an absolute mess.
I'm selling, but I'm going with Colorado. Has been the least impressive team so far. I mean, honestly, they really, I mean, from where they were last year, winning their division to a 1-4-2 start, and hardly scoring any goals at all, and really just so much confusion going on. They are just, you're starting to remember why they got Nathan McKinnon in the first place. They sucked a couple years ago.
Right.
They were not good. And that the bottom line is, and they are starting to look, more like that team than the team they looked like last year. So that's to me is scary for them. They don't seem to have a plan right now. But that's my thought on Colorado. So got a long way to go, but that was a fun segment. I like doing that, guys. That was really good, and people in the chat room seem to enjoy it as well. We'll do more things like that. We're also going to do something I'm going to bring up in the near future where I'm right now I'm working on a list of the 30 most tradable players in the NHL. And I think I'll introduce one of them at a time. We'll talk about one in a show, and just whether or not these guys are, tradable, what we think what they could get. And tradable means a lot of things. Obviously, it's a very debatable term. They're on a team that will definitely trade them. We have players like that. There's other players that need fresh starts, like Byfuglien or things like that. So it'll be a really interesting development for sure. But I really appreciate all you guys watching, and remember to follow Kevin at @ByKevinAllen and Mike at @MikeInBuffalo. And really, again, our thoughts and prayers with everyone in Ottawa and everyone around that situation. Hope everything works out okay, and hope you're safe wherever you are. Enjoy the hockey tonight. And again, if you missed it, the Leafs-Sens game is canceled due to all the circumstances up there, which is a right and only thing the NHL should have done in the first place. So that's good. Tomorrow, a little quick note on tomorrow's show. We won't be doing tomorrow's show at 1 o'clock. This is probably news to Kevin as well, because I didn't even get to tell you this yet. So tomorrow's show, we won't be doing it at 1. I just talked to Mike about this briefly beforehand. I will be in New York. I've got some meetings in the afternoon. So we're going to do a show at 6 p.m. Eastern. I don't know if any, and Mike and I are going to do it. Kevin, if you can do it, that's great. We'll see who else is going to be around. A lot of people might, if you're not around, we'll find other people to be around too. But yeah, tomorrow I actually have a pretty big meeting. I can't talk about now, but it should be kind of fun stuff for the future of Hockey Buzz. So I'll be in New York tomorrow, and I'll be back after that. So look at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Same bat time, same bat channel. All right. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Talk to you soon.